For days, millions of people were convinced something about Taylor Swift's wedding made absolutely no sense. Not because she was marrying Travis Kelce. The strange part was everything else. Taylor could have chosen almost anywhere on Earth: a private island, a European castle, a hidden estate, a luxury villa far away from cameras. Instead, she chose Madison Square Garden, an arena in the middle of Manhattan. And almost immediately, the rumors became insane. Around 1,000 guests, a giant castle supposedly being built inside the venue, secret entrances, phone bans, NDAs, heavy security, street closures, a guest list that sounded less like a wedding and more like the biggest awards show on Earth. Then came the backlash. People called it tacky, selfish, completely over the top. But some of Taylor's own fans had a different theory. They thought the entire thing was fake. A decoy. A giant misdirection designed to pull every camera in New York toward Madison Square Garden, while the real ceremony happened somewhere else. And honestly, for a moment, that theory almost made sense. Because this is Taylor Swift, and her fans have spent years searching for clues in dates, colors, lyrics, outfits, hand gestures, and tiny background details. If anyone could convince the world she was getting married inside one of the most famous arenas on Earth, while secretly doing something completely different, people believed it would be her. But then July 3rd arrived. The wedding was real. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce actually got married at Madison Square Garden. And somehow, that made the story even stranger. Because once the decoy theory collapsed, a much bigger question replaced it. Why? Why would one of the richest women in entertainment choose an arena over a castle, island, private estate, or luxury resort? Why build a fantasy world indoors when she could rent the real thing? And why did the entire event sound less like a romantic ceremony and more like a high-security operation? The answer may have very little to do with romance. Because when you think about Madison Square Garden as a wedding venue, it sounds bizarre. But when you think about it as a security environment, everything changes. Taylor could have chosen a castle, but a castle has windows. She could have chosen a private beach, but a beach has open sightlines. She could have chosen a remote estate. But then you have unfamiliar staff, transportation routes, temporary security, nearby properties, drones, photographers, and countless places where information can leak. Madison Square Garden already knows how to move huge numbers of people through controlled entrances. It already handles celebrities, athletes, performers, backstage routes, loading areas, private corridors, and major security operations. Once you control the building, you control almost everything inside it. And that may be the part critics missed. Taylor may not have chosen an arena because it was more romantic than a castle. She may have chosen an arena because an arena could become anything. A garden, a ballroom, a fantasy world. A sealed environment where entrances, exits, vehicles, staff, guests, and cameras could all be managed. For an ordinary bride, that sounds extreme. For Taylor Swift, it may be the closest thing to privacy available. And there is a darker reason this matters. Taylor's level of fame does not create normal celebrity problems. She has dealt with serious security concerns before, and after her planned Vienna shows were canceled in 2024, following an alleged attack plot, every major Taylor Swift event carried a different kind of risk. Now, imagine a wedding packed with musicians, actors, athletes, executives, family members, and hundreds of guests. Imagine how much one photograph from inside could be worth. A picture of the dress, a clip of the vows, a shot of the seating plan, a blurry image showing which celebrities were sitting together. Any tiny detail could become global news within minutes. So maybe the real question is not why Taylor chose Madison Square Garden. Maybe it is whether any normal wedding venue could have protected the event better. And that leads to the next strange part of the story: the secrecy. Reports and speculation described strict controls around phones and confidentiality. Staff reportedly faced restrictions. Guests were expected to respect intense privacy rules. And if that sounds excessive, think about what Taylor's team was trying to prevent. One guest takes one photograph. That photograph gets sent to one friend. The friend forwards it. Within minutes, it appears online. Within an hour, entertainment pages are reposting it. Fashion accounts are identifying the dress. Fans are zooming into the background. Gossip pages are naming every person they can spot. By the time the couple finishes celebrating, the wedding has become content for the entire world. That is the reality of a Taylor Swift wedding. So the secrecy was not only about keeping paparazzi outside, it was about controlling what escaped from inside. But even with all that control, the internet still found a way in. Fake images began circulating. AI-generated wedding pictures appeared online, creating a bizarre new problem. Taylor's team was not only dealing with the possibility of real images leaking, they were dealing with fake images filling the silence. Think about the trap. If Taylor releases nothing, people invent something. If she releases too much, the wedding stops being private. If her team denies every fake, they spend the entire week correcting the internet. And if they ignore the fakes, millions of people may believe scenes that never happened. That is a level of fame almost nobody experiences. And before the ceremony even happened, one rumor had already taken over the entire conversation. The castle. For days, people talked about a giant castle supposedly being built inside Madison Square Garden. It was the perfect rumor, ridiculous enough to be mocked, believable enough to spread. People asked why anyone would spend a fortune building an artificial castle when actual castles already exist around the world. The rumor became powerful because it confirmed what critics already wanted to believe, that the wedding was excessive, detached, a billionaire fantasy taken too far. But after the event, the story became murkier. Some reporting pushed back on the castle claim. The venue may have been transformed dramatically, but the giant castle people imagined was not necessarily real. And that matters, because by then, the castle had already done its job. People had heard about it, pictured it, debated it, judged it. In the modern internet, a rumor does not need to survive forever. It only needs to survive long enough to shape the conversation. And the same thing happened with the guest list. Names were flying everywhere: musicians, actors, athletes, industry figures, people from Taylor's past, people from Travis's world. At some point, the rumored guest list started sounding like someone had combined the Grammys, the Super Bowl, and the Met Gala. But one of the biggest stories was not about who arrived, it was about who apparently did not. Blake Lively. That absence immediately became explosive because Blake was not some random celebrity acquaintance. Taylor and Blake had been publicly close for years. Taylor is godmother to Blake's children. Their families had shared visible connections. So when speculation spread that Blake was not at the wedding, people treated it like evidence. Evidence that something had broken. Evidence that the friendship was over. Evidence that private tension had finally become public. Almost immediately, the internet filled in the blanks. Some reports framed it as a devastating snub. Others suggested the friendship had been strained. Anonymous source stories began circulating. But here is the problem. The loudest version of a celebrity story is not automatically the truest one. Neither Taylor nor Blake publicly gave the world a complete explanation for every rumor surrounding their relationship. And there is a huge difference between what people observed, what outlets reported, and what the internet decided must be true. Because a missing guest can quickly become a confirmed feud. A confirmed feud becomes a betrayal. A betrayal becomes a revenge story. And suddenly millions of people are discussing private conversations they never heard. Still, the speculation did not come from nowhere. Their friendship had already been under scrutiny. That is why Blake's apparent absence generated more attention than many celebrities who were actually there. In celebrity culture, an empty chair can become more powerful than a room full of stars. But while the outside world obsessed over missing guests and secret feuds, reports from inside described something much more emotional. And that is where the public image of the wedding begins to crack. Because from outside, it looked like a production. Security, celebrity arrivals, an arena, luxury fashion, hundreds of guests, a city watching. From inside, it was still a wedding. Reports described personal vows and emotional moments. And then came one of the details almost nobody could have predicted. Adam Sandler reportedly officiated. That sounds like something the internet invented. Yet somehow it fits this wedding perfectly, because almost every detail contained a contradiction. an arena turned intimate, a public spectacle built around secrecy, a huge event obsessed with privacy, a billionaire bride choosing a sports venue, and Adam Sandler standing at the center of it all. Then there was the music. Paul McCartney reportedly performed "I Want to Hold Your Hand." Think about the weight of that moment. One of the most famous love songs in pop history, performed by one of the people who helped create it, at the wedding of one of the biggest pop stars of the modern era. Taylor grew up in a world shaped by the Beatles. Then she became one of the few modern artists whose fame could even be discussed on that kind of global scale. And now Paul McCartney was reportedly part of the celebration as she entered a new chapter. But outside Madison Square Garden, not everyone was celebrating. Some New Yorkers were furious, and their argument was not difficult to understand. This was a private wedding, a billionaire's private wedding, yet it happened in one of the busiest parts of Manhattan during a major holiday weekend. Street restrictions affected the area, security was visible. Residents and businesses had to deal with disruption. So people asked the obvious question, who pays for this? Because there is a huge difference between Taylor Swift paying for private security and ordinary taxpayers carrying costs connected to a billionaire's celebration. The moment public police resources enter the conversation, people become angry. And they are right to ask questions. But this is also where the rumor machine became dangerous again. Wild numbers circulated. Some claims suggested enormous percentages of the police force could somehow be tied up around the wedding. The most dramatic versions spread fastest because they created the most outrage. But repeating a huge number does not make it true. There was clearly a significant security operation. The event was clearly high profile, but dramatic claims still require evidence. And the real issue is already complicated enough. Taylor Swift is extraordinarily wealthy. She also faces extraordinary security risks. Both things can be true. Her wealth creates a reasonable expectation that private costs should be privately covered. Her fame creates legitimate reasons for serious protection. Both things can be true. People can question disruption without pretending she faces normal risks. Fans can defend her safety without pretending billionaires should receive unlimited public support. And maybe that tension explains why this wedding became impossible to discuss normally. People who love Taylor saw romance. People who dislike billionaires saw excess. Swifties saw clues. Critics saw ego. Conspiracy accounts saw a decoy. Security experts saw risk. New Yorkers saw barricades, and almost everyone believed their version was the real one. But think about the venue one more time. Critics asked why Taylor would recreate a magical world indoors when beautiful places already exist naturally. Why build a garden inside an arena? Why transform concrete into fantasy? Why not simply go somewhere beautiful? But that question assumes Taylor experiences beautiful places the way ordinary people do. She does not. For most people, a private beach means privacy. For Taylor Swift, it can mean leaked flight data, photographers, boats offshore, staff rumors, drones, and fans trying to identify the location from one background detail. For most people, a castle means seclusion. For Taylor, it can mean unfamiliar workers, roads that cannot be controlled, tourists nearby, local leaks, and hundreds of guests moving toward one identifiable place. For most people, an arena means exposure. For Taylor, an arena may mean infrastructure. That is the inversion. Madison Square Garden looked public from the outside, but once sealed, it may have offered more control than a supposedly private paradise. Cars could move through restricted access points. Guests could be shielded. The interior could be rebuilt. Security teams could work with familiar infrastructure. Taylor may not have chosen Madison Square Garden despite being rich enough to go anywhere. She may have chosen it because being rich enough to go anywhere no longer guarantees privacy. And that is a much darker version of luxury. Imagine having enough money to visit almost any place on Earth but being too famous to experience almost any place normally. A beautiful view becomes a security problem. A restaurant becomes crowd control. A hotel becomes a leak. A flight becomes a tracking event. A wedding becomes a global spectacle before it even happens. At that point, maybe the ultimate luxury is not beauty. It is control. And control appears to have shaped almost every part of this wedding. The venue, the entrances, the phone rules, the secrecy, the staff restrictions, the information. But here's the irony. The more tightly controlled the wedding became, the more obsessed people became with breaking through that control. Every hidden detail gained value. Every rumor became content. Every blurry image became evidence. And when real information was unavailable, fake information stepped in. That may be the most modern part of the entire story. 10 years ago, celebrity wedding rumors were mostly gossip. Today, people can generate convincing fake images in seconds. A fake dress, a fake kiss, a fake ceremony, a fake guest, a fake castle. And because the real event was already so unusual, fake images did not need to look normal. They only needed to look possible. Taylor Swift marrying Travis Kelce at Madison Square Garden already sounds surreal. So a fantasy castle? People believed it. Paul McCartney performing? Reportedly true. Adam Sandler officiating? Reportedly true. Reality itself was strange enough to protect the fake versions, and that may be the biggest thing this wedding revealed. By the time Taylor and Travis said their vows, the world had already invented multiple versions of the event. In one version, a giant castle stood inside Madison Square Garden. In another, the entire wedding was fake. In another, Taylor was secretly getting married somewhere else. In another, the guest list proved which friendships had died. In another, the security operation proved billionaire excess. Then the real wedding happened. And even that did not end the speculation, because online reality is no longer the final word. It is just one version competing for attention. Maybe that is why the Madison Square Garden choice matters so much. For all the rumors about castles, secret plans, hidden clues, and elaborate misdirection, the simplest explanation may be the one people ignored. Control. Not an Easter egg. Not an album rollout. Not a decoy. Control. A venue large enough for the people they wanted. Secure enough for the risks they faced. Flexible enough to become almost anything inside. Private enough once locked down, and strong enough to separate the chaos outside from the ceremony within. If that is the answer, then the wedding becomes less mysterious. But Taylor's life becomes more unsettling. Because imagine reaching a point where one of the busiest arenas in America feels safer than a secluded paradise. Imagine being so famous that privacy requires scale. So watch that intimacy requires infrastructure. So valuable is content that one leaked photograph can become global news. So recognizable that fake wedding images can spread alongside real ones. That is not ordinary fame. It is something closer to permanent surveillance. So maybe Madison Square Garden was not the strangest wedding venue after all. Maybe for a woman who can go almost anywhere but can barely disappear anywhere, it was the closest thing to a locked room. Taylor Swift had enough money to choose any dream location on Earth. She chose an arena, not because she had run out of options, but maybe because at her level of fame, options are not the same thing as freedom, and that changes the entire story.